You go ahead. You go ahead.
No, it's fine. You
You start. Go ahead. Say.
All right. As of May of this year, we will have been together 48 years. We met first weekend in May. We never really looked at the date because we didn't know that it was going to work out. So 48 years is, yeah, that's it.
I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I was born in 1936. I was born on my mother's birthday, which is kind of weird. I was also born on Picasso's birthday. I don't think I was ever as horny as Picasso. This little cute thing down there is my sister. This is my brother. My father was a Jamaican. This is my grandmother on my mother's side. She was part Choctaw Indian. My mother did elementary school. My father worked in civil service. We lived in what was then known as the Old Black Ghetto. Exposition Boulevard was a dividing line. And at that one point, people who lived below Exposition were all white, and no blacks lived in that neighborhood down below. This is my junior high school class of 1951. I think the picture cost 50 cents. It cost about $50 to have it framed. But the interesting thing is about this is in that neighborhood, South Central LA, this is what it really looked, and you can see there's quite a diversity of people. In our neighborhood, there was a cadre of both Mexicanos and also Japanese. I knew about sushi long before it was even fashionable. So, yes, it was segregated. There was a feeling of upward mobility if you did things right. And my father encouraged us to get as much education. So they took us to various things that I think were important. We would get in our old beat-up Ford car, and we would go on trips all over the place in Southern California. We went to concerts in the old Temple Baptist Church, which is where the LA Phil played, and it helped to develop what became one of the passions of my life, and that was music. My parents insisted that we all play some musical instrument, and that's how my brother got involved. He fell in love with the viola. Of the three of us, he was the most innate talent. He was a very, very fine musician. This is my brother and me. It was a favorite of mine. Mother, she loved this picture of the two of us. She was madly in love with both of us at that time. I knew I began to have feelings when I was about 12 years old. Other kids would say like, "Oh man, did you see that girl going by there? Or, man, did you check out her rear ends and how she was coming around?" And I used to fake it and say, "Oh yeah." Well, it didn't do anything for me, to be perfectly honest with you. And then I remember having crushes on young men. Okay, and I could feel something was going on in me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I really maybe did not do anything actively until I went to college. I was somewhat unique because I was going to USC when there were not that many blacks going there. And then I began to really explore. I began to explore about all the possibilities that were possible to deal with my sexuality. Los Angeles, during my coming out period, was pretty awful town. And I've even known people who've committed suicide behind it. Behind it in the sense that for what happened to them. The entrapment situation was absolutely horrible. I had a bacteriology lab partner when I was going to SC, and it turns out, he worked for LAPD. We're talking about the late 50s, okay? On one occasion, he said, "God, I'm so tired. Last night, we had a big catch." I said, "What was the catch?" He said, with my partner, entrapped 14 faggots last night. He and his partner would go into the parks, and he would stand with his hands on his hips, his partner's off like maybe in other bushes, and then he would let the gay person make the first move, and then he would entrap them, and that was it. But when he said 14 faggots, we arrested last night. And I was stuck with him for another 4 weeks. I mean, I just became like, and then I began to warn my friends, stay out of the parks. Okay, that was pretty awful. But I never felt guilty about my sexuality. I just never, even when my mother, after she, tried to make me feel like I was a piece of shit, okay, because my mother was quite homophobic. In fact, she could be quite nasty about it. At one point, she said, "Oh, I wish you'd gone to bed with 1,000 horses and contacted syphilis," which was pretty intense. Okay. She then went into this whole thing with, "You have broken my heart. You have broken my heart." But I made it very clear to her that you're not going to make me feel like shit, okay? Because I am what I am. On the other hand, strangely enough, my father, who was a Jamaican and who are Jamaican men tend to be quite homophobic. My father was indeed a very loving person, and his love for me, I still have his letters to me, which were really quite something. I mean, some of the most beautiful love letters I've ever received from anybody came from my father, of which my father said something in essence, I don't really understand it, but I want you to know that I loved you very much, and life is difficult, and I don't want you to be lonely in life. And he was very, very supportive of me in everything that I did. I guess the next big seminal thing is that I always wanted to go to Europe. When I told my mother that I wanted to go to Europe, she kept thinking like, telling you any way you would accept this, your black ass is going to work, okay? The money that's been spent on you, you think you want to do what? What are you going to do there? I mean, I went to Paris, which I couldn't believe how beautiful that city was. I went to London, which I thought was so majestic, okay? But Vienna was very special, and I will never forget my coming to Vienna and looking at what became my church, synagogue, Islamic temple, which is the Vienna Staatsoper, which is one of the world's great opera houses. It was my first encounter with white people who were not Americans, with a different culture from anything that I know. No one ever pushed me about my sexuality. I mean, no matter where I went. That was one of the big, for 6 to maybe 8 months, that was wonderful for me to go to Europe. So I started to think about what my future would be, and I ended up in the Bay Area. San Francisco, to me, was a much more open city to me at that time. It was the beginning of the whole germination of the whole hippie era. And it turned out I ended up being the lover of a composer. We were together for 8.5 years, and he became the resident composer in Berlin. And I knew that somehow the relationship was coming to an end. So I began to talk to people, and I ended up a job working for United Artists. The films that UA had during that time was just unbelievable, including Midnight Cowboy, Last Tango in Paris, all the James Bond films, Cuckoo's Nest. I really enjoyed that. That was, I must say, the job was wonderful. Okay. This was at my United Artists days, and this is probably like 1973 here. This is New York. Yeah, I was still desirable at this time. Hey, you gotta call a spade, you know?
Yeah, you were a spade.
The first years, I did not really like New York as a city. I found it to be dirty. You come home and you run your hands on the windows and you end up with all black crap all over you. But But my libido was high, and New York was a good leg, okay?
I was born in 1946 in Boston and Longmeadow, Massachusetts, is essentially where I grew up. This is me as a cute, adorable baby, if I do say so myself. Longmeadow was a white town. There were no minorities. The only minorities that came at 8 o'clock in the morning and left at 5 o'clock in the evening, those were the domestic workers who came from Springfield on the bus, by and large, to do day work. The only way I distinguished people was if you were Jewish or not Jewish. I was Jewish, so everyone else who wasn't was in the other group of people. It's only later when I started to move about that I realized that there were other kinds of people. My father had a solid middle-class income. My mother was a substitute school teacher. We didn't go on vacations. So I lived in a town where the level of indulgences were high. Kids came back from winter vacation with little tags on their jacket. I said, "What are those? What are those tags on your jacket?" They had gone skiing. I didn't know anything about that. So I had a very middle-class life, but I wasn't jealous. I say that honestly. One thing did happen, and that was in junior high school. The kids were going to the Longmeadow Community Center to take dancing lessons. The boys had to get dressed up in a suit and tie, and the boys and girls wore white gloves. Don't forget, in Longmeadow, there was the Longmeadow Country Club where Jews were excluded. So here was a place where Jews and non-Jews could mix, because this was open to everybody. And I really wanted to go. Why did I want to go? I just thought it was the coolest thing. And the boys wearing gloves, I didn't see anything effeminate about it. I thought of it more as just being very classy. But it cost $25. And my mother said she didn't have it. And I was very disappointed. Okay, she didn't have it. Somehow she won some bingo game and came up with the $25. And I went to the lessons. And I was the happiest boy to be able to take dancing lessons. Cha-cha, waltz, foxtrot, I was in. So my parents both came from religious homes, and that infused the atmosphere in our house. So at a young age, I was sent to Hebrew school, which all Jewish boys and girls did. You go to Hebrew school after school. That was 3 days a week. I went to Jewish summer camps. In my junior year of high school, I went to Israel for the first time. So all these influences coalesced and gave me my strong Jewish upbringing. My father was a quiet man. He wasn't a talker. That was just who he was. My mother was the verbal one. She ran the family. And my mother would say from time to time that because my father's family did not survive the war, my mother tried to impress upon me the importance of my getting married, having children, and carrying on the Friedlander name. Well, I understood that, and I appreciated it because I love my father and I love my mother, but I realized at some point in my life that just wasn't going to be possible. In junior high school, I started to notice the boys. Growing up in Longmeadow, first of all, the word gay didn't exist, number one. Well, straight didn't exist either. Anything less than that, you were an oddball, but I didn't think of it in those terms. The divisions weren't clear to me at that time because you're feeling your way. You're going through puberty like everyone else is at that age. And So whatever feelings I had, I kept to myself. I do remember that I was confused as to what I was supposed to do with a girl. Was I supposed to make out? Was I supposed to do something with her? I didn't know what that was. And I never felt an urge or a need or desire to get a girlfriend, which was at some point all the boys, you had to have a girlfriend, you had to wear a varsity jacket. I never felt that. I wasn't going to do it because I didn't want to do it. So the pressures were there, but I resisted them because it wasn't me. I felt badly that I couldn't carry on the name, but I couldn't change who I was. That was beyond my abilities. I could change my name, I could change my religion, maybe, my shirt, but I couldn't change my sexuality. That's just the way it was. But nevertheless, I did not see a conflict between my Jewish faith and being the gay person that I am. I would somehow try to reconcile the two, and I would say that I have. I graduated from Columbia University, where I'd gone to school. New York was a wild scene for gay men. The bars, the baths, the movie houses, it was wild.
There were 2 or 3 major areas for big time for cruising. You were primarily there for sex. This is pre-AIDS, okay? There's one particular evening I did what a lot of men did there. There was Central Park.
One evening I strolled over to Central Park, and lo and behold, there was this man there. Most of the guys were in jeans and t-shirts, and not much else. Orville, true to his nature, was in, and I remembered very well, a pair of corduroy pants and a V-neck sweater. Who goes at night to Central Park dressed up? Who? Orville. So I was immediately captivated.
It was the corduroys.
It was the corduroys. It turned me on. And you were just very different from anyone else I had met up until that time. And so I invited him up, and he didn't stop talking. About music, about who he was. I'm thinking, oh my God.
I liked to talk, and I was talking, and finally, he said, like, "Oh, enough already, I've heard enough." And he turned on his little radio, I don't forget, and he was playing, which has become our theme song, which is Marvin Gaye singing, "What's Going On?" Okay, and it was great.
I asked him for his phone number, and I called him, and we continued to see each other, and I would come down and visit him. He would make a meal, and we just enjoyed each other's company. And then we go out to eat at other times. Did I know that it would develop into something lifelong? No, but I liked him immediately.
We really kind of built it. There were a couple things that I remember I wanted to take him out to what I thought was a hip and cool restaurant. And then I realized, holy shit, he can't eat a lot of the food here, because he was still keeping kosher at that point. Far more, I mean, he still does, but not like it was at that time. And I kept thinking to myself, wait a minute, not like at the time, the population of New York was about 7.5 million people. And there were, at least half of them were men, okay? So I had a big choice, okay? But that was okay. I liked his demeanor. I liked his glasses, because he had big Air Force glasses at the time. Then we started to date. And then he said to me, I really, I want to go to Israel. I want to go, and I want to spend time on a kibbutz. So I said, okay. And at the beginning of it, I thought, well, I'll never see him again.
So I went off to Israel. I spent 6 months as a volunteer on a kibbutz, because that was something I always wanted to do. This is me, and some of my co-workers outside the living quarters of the kibbutz. It was a special time in my life.
But we then continued to communicate with each other. I used to send him the New York Times on Sunday. Okay, he got the New York Times while he was on the kibbutz. And at about that time, my first partner was writing a composition that was being performed at the, he wrote it for the Stuttgart Ballet. And they were having a ballet opera in Munich. So I went for the premiere of his work.
Orville told me he was going to be in Munich. So I said to Orville, "You're going to be in Munich? I'm in Israel. Let's meet in Paris."
I said, I'm in Munich. Why don't we try to get together in Paris?
Orville says that was his idea, but I know it was my idea. Okay. So we met in Paris, had a wonderful time together. I was 25, he was 35. I was as bronze from the sun as anyone could be. Had some muscles on me from all the hard labor I did.
It was like a movie set. I mean, we had a wonderful week together. It was there that we decided that we should try living together in funky New York.
I had a very important experience when I came back from Paris. On the kibbutz, I became particularly friendly with one of the American girls, Debbie. I had told her that I was going to see Orville, and she sensed there was more to it than just going to meet someone in Paris. So I came back a week later. She's sitting on the side of my bed. I remember it very well. And I told her what we did, and there was a moment of silence, and she said, "But you're so normal." Well, I didn't know how to react to that. Of course I was normal. I never thought of myself as being anything other than normal. She was used to knowing gay men who acted in a certain way, and I wasn't any of that. So that's why she thought I was so normal. And maybe that just proves that we come in all sizes and shapes and colors. So do straight people, so do gay people, so do black people, Jewish people, whatever it is. Yeah, we have stereotypes, but if we're honest, we see that those are just stereotypes. So 47 years later, we're still the best of friends. Her boys are very dear and close to me. We've gone to all the family events, and we have maintained a wonderful relationship. So I came back from Israel, and Orville and I were living in a one-room apartment in what is now called Soho. And we were very happy.
This was 1971. The rent was $175 a month, okay? Okay. And during the second year, the rent went up to $192.50, okay?
And that really was the start of my lifetime relationship with Orville. Here's Orville opening a bottle of champagne.
Champagne, they're like the real thing.
You see it better now that we dusted it? You and your fetish for dusting. We started to travel, and the experiences have been wonderful. We went to Monaco, and here we are overlooking the city of Nice. Our first trip together to Israel, the blue Mediterranean behind us. We love learning about people. We love going to new places, experiencing, eating the food, listening to the music, seeing the
museums.
museum site, and finding new opportunities to see and experience.
Yeah. This is up in New Hampshire, the Franconian Inn. It's a lovely inn, and we spent a lovely, lovely time. Bob still has that shirt, and I still have that shirt. And now that I've lost a lot of weight, I can get back into it.
My own personal development as a gay person was certainly affected by Stonewall, yet I'm not a person that goes to demonstrations by and large.
Then, toward the end of the
biggest.
70s, there was the Great Death. And we
AIDS.
AIDS. I would say my brother was bisexual. Okay. Let's see, he was born in 1941, so it was a whole different way of being gay and surviving. You know, it was. Like, for example, I used to have, polite arguments about, you've got to put on a condom. And he says, well, it doesn't feel good. I don't want to use it. That's it. It's a matter of life and death. He died in 2000, and it was the long dying of eventually from HIV to full-blown AIDS. Upon his death, I said, it'd be nice to set up a scholarship in memory of our brother in his name at the Thornton School of Music. We've been able to build a solidly endowed scholarship, and it's specifically for students of color in the classical arena, because that was his instrument. He played the violin. He played quite well.
When people hear that you're in the life insurance business, it's like nothing can silence a conversation quicker than that. But because of my connections in the gay community, I started to get a lot of calls from gay men, some lesbians, for insurance. Well, this was a time when insurance companies did not look happily upon a life insurance policy where the beneficiary was another man. The problem was exacerbated by the AIDS epidemic. Insurance companies were not going to insure an HIV-positive man any more than they were going to insure someone with heart disease. Would an HIV-positive man possibly have a long life? Not back then. That was a death sentence. Well, we paid a little trick. We'd make a parent the beneficiary, or we'd make a nonprofit organization the beneficiary, and then once the policy was issued, we'd change it, because you could do that legally. Here's a picture of my mother wearing her favorite color, which was red. My parents always liked Orville. There was no problem. The question was, at what level did they know him? Was he a friend or something else?
But there was a period when, after her husband died, when her eyes opened up and she said, he's just not your roommate. There's other things going on there.
I remember it very well. She called and, in essence, wanted to know what was going on between Orville and me. And she wanted me to move out. I said I couldn't do that. So there was a period where Orville no longer went up to Longmeadow for the holidays. Orville, of course, was hurt, naturally. But he forgave her because he understood. My mother was of a different generation. The issue with my parents wasn't over race, it was over the fact that he was another man. Look, parents can be disappointed when their children marry the opposite sex too. That's no guarantee. We know that. Well, that continued for about a year and a half, I don't remember exactly. And then my mother had an 80th birthday. And I decided that I would make a big birthday party for her. My father had passed away. And I said, Mom, Orville's coming. He's coming.
So I came, and his mother and I sat down and we talked rather openly about it. She said, she always admired me, but the fact that she couldn't accept, where her son had been. But then finally, and I'm sure she talked with her rabbi at the synagogue. She talked with a very, very close friend. She did say, would it have been easier for you if he had been Jewish? And she said, yes, because I could have had another mother to talk to about it.
I don't know how she came to peace with it. Perhaps it was just looking at the news, saying how the world had changed. I'll never know. But if it was through her own efforts to understand who her son was, God bless her. After that, things started to get better. These photographs were taken at a surprise 65th birthday party for Orville, and our dear mother was the first one to run up to the door to greet Orville. And my mother stood up in the front of 180 people, and she said at the end that she had 2 sons of her own, but now she had a third. Well, if that wasn't a formal declaration in front of 180 people of her love, I don't know what could possibly be.
And at the end of her life, which I'm still deeply moved by, when she said to me, she said, I want you to know that I love you very much, and I want the 2 of you to take care of each other until your time comes.
What more can a person say than that? My mother was very active in Girl Scouts. She attained their highest rank, Golden Eaglet, and for several summers she attended Camp Bonnie Bray in East Otis, Massachusetts. In 2009, at the camp, I dedicated the museum and welcome center there in her name. They gave me great pleasure to make the donation to the Girl Scouts, and it gave me great pleasure to memorialize her name, and that was very meaningful to her. So maybe there are other ways to carry on the family name without having children.
I love Bob's love of giving and helping people. He has given on my behalf to my involvement in the YMCA, and when I was trying to put together monies to start my brother's memorial scholarship, he helped me in every way. And in some ways, I've done the same when they were choosing a new rabbi, and they were having focus groups, and they've been quite accepting of me. They said, you know, we want you to sit in on the focus group. And I said, but I'm not Jewish. And he said, listen, you know more about it than we probably do.
When I celebrated the 50th anniversary of my bar mitzvah, I went back to the synagogue where I had my bar mitzvah at age 13, and I had introduced Orville a few days before to the new rabbi after I finished my portion of the religious service
Which is all in Hebrew.
on the Sabbath. She turned to Orville, and what did she say?
She said, and there was a whole congregation. She said, now, Orville, I'd like to have you read a prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you did it in English.
Yeah.
But also, in introducing Orville to family and friends, it's not just that he is Black, it's that he's gay, and that means that I'm gay. For gay men, things have changed for the better. I went to my conversational Hebrew class last night at the Jewish Community Center on the West Side. One of the men in the class, within a few minutes, talked about his partner, and I'm thinking, are these guys lucky to live in a time when, at least on the west side of Manhattan, I'm not so stupid to think that it's universal, that they can just be who they are. It wasn't always so easy, and even in my lifetime, to be as open and honest as they were.
I get a little bit concerned with the fact that younger people are not aware of what those that came before them had to go through to be where they are. I would encourage younger people to explore the world and have experiences. Enjoy your youth. Be giving. Give. If you've had a positive experience, share that with someone in any way that you can. Make room for for cross-fertilization of cultures. And beyond that, we all eat, sleep, smell bad if we don't bathe, and we carry on.
I looked in the mirror this morning and I saw I don't look like I did when I was 22. I don't feel like I'm 22, but I don't feel 72. It's one thing to think that one day you're going to get old, but one day you are old.
I know where it's all headed. I mean, at this stage of my life. I'm 82, and I am very much becoming, you know the Yiddish term altakaka? Altakaka meaning an old fart. Okay. My body has changed. I was never a brown Adonis. But I held my own.
I thought you looked pretty good.
Okay.
I didn't kick you out of
the sack.
Out of the sack.
And I'll say it openly, Bob, that the last years of my life, as the way they are now leading to it, I've had my issues. That is physical issues that I never thought I would have. I've had one stent put in, okay? I never thought I'd have spinal stenosis deterioration. I've had prostate cancer. At this stage of my life, I can say, as a friend of mine in Seattle says, "Oh, you've got the libido of a stud pygmy now." Okay. Bob has been very gracious to me in that way. He really bends over backwards to take care of me.
Well, I care about him terribly, and I want to protect him as much as I can. So we do the best we can. Can't take the subway anymore, have to take car service. We had hoped to go to Japan and Hong Kong last April. Couldn't do that. Hopefully we'll do more in the future. Remains to be seen. We'll do the best we can.
I could not have ever done any better in life of having a more devoted partner. I've learned so much. I think we have learned from each other. I think if I had not had the experience of living with someone totally different from who I am, from different cultures, this has certainly exposed us to things that you probably might not have ever even come about to even realize. That is so important.
Look, I know that Orville's black and I know that I'm white. I know that. Does he come from a different place? Sure. But I'm very grateful because Orville gave me so much. Shared his values, his love of music, art, the history of African Americans here in the United States, about which I knew nothing. It's an amazing relationship now that I think of it. There are many people who meet and find out that they have things in common. Maybe they don't meet under a tree in Central Park, but okay, that's what happened. It was an extraordinary coincidence to meet someone in that way. Life is full of chance encounters, and be open. Sometimes they work.
Well, I love him very much. I mean, I really do.
I love you very much.
And it's kind of wonderful that I think that you do exist in my life.
Absolutely.
Do you think you guys are going to stay together?
For the rest of the day or longer? I think yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, exactly.